Welcome to another episode of In Bed with Books. I'm your host, Melissa, and today I'm going to be talking about a recent book that I read called Lore of the Wilds. It is by Analeigh Sbrana, and it's a book that took me a while to actually fully get through, but at the very end I did enjoy it. So I rated this 4 stars, and we can get into why in just a second, but just know that I would say that it did not start out feeling like a 4-star book for me. The main issue that I had made it so hard for me to not only get through, the first 4 or 5 chapters, but also the first 100 pages, which is like a third of the book. I was reading the ebook version of this from the library, and it was about 315 pages. So a solid chunk of this book I was really struggling with. So it was definitely a struggle to get through those first 100 pages, knowing that the marketing around the book is essentially what sold me on reading this. And so I'm pushing through these 100 pages trying to get to the parts that online were selling it for me, and on the cover were selling it for me. Generally, I try to stay away from what I know going into it are love triangles. And if you didn't see the marketing, if you see the cover, it's very clearly a love triangle from the beginning. Except that I shouldn't even say it's not even from the beginning, because you spend the first maybe even 200 pages of this book, like 2/3 of this book, or just past the halfway point of this book, with just one of the love interests. And he wasn't the one from the 2 guys on the cover that I was interested in. So I was very much trudging through this, trying to get to the broody, tall, dark, and handsome guy. The dark fae of the 2. I guess technically they're both dark fae, but there's definitely one that's the broody, loner, kind of dark and handsome one. I must have checked this book out of the library. Actually, I'd have to look at my Libby history to see how many times I checked this out, because I would get it and then I would read a few pages and then I just couldn't keep pushing through. And I really enjoyed Lore. So the main character, it wasn't like a disconnect between me and the main character. I found her very relatable. I found a lot of her thought processes made a lot of sense to me. And I think that's not always the case with, particularly fantasy main characters, but just in general. And I think the biggest problem for me, though, was that it feels like Lore is just getting dragged around. She doesn't seem to have a focus or an actual goal. And when she does say that she has specific intentions, she's not typically working towards those in a way that, I think would have pushed the book a little faster, or picked up the pacing a little bit. There's a lot of, she just gets stuck in situations, or circumstances are happening around her and to her versus her taking the chance and doing things. And that's not to say that she never makes a choice, because as with all of my reviews, there will be spoilers. So when she finally makes, I think there's 2 main big decisions that she makes early in the book. One of those is the fae who have essentially imprisoned her people come looking for somebody who knows how to read. And at first they want her aunt, and she stands up very quickly and she's like, no, you're going to take me. And I think that definitely set a precedent for me expecting her to take more initiative. But it's not until a little while later, I think part of it is that so much of the early stuff feels like exposition, we're just learning this world, which is an easy pitfall if you're writing the first book in a fantasy series. I don't know how many books this is going to be, but we're establishing a universe essentially. And so of course it's going to be easy to fall into that habit or that that writing style. But the next big main decision that she seems to make for herself is when she finds a book with magic and it speaks to her and she runs away with it to try to help her people. After she runs away, she like kind of settles back into this place of like passivity. And the thing is, I wouldn't really describe her just based on her internal monologues or the way she interacts with people as a passive person, but in her actual regular actions, she is acting kind of passively. And that really slowed down the pace of the action in the book, which was, again, a struggle for me to get through. All of that being said, makes it sound like I did not like the book, like I did not like lore. I did. I loved this book. I think it was such a beautiful world that's been created, and I really liked the way that Sbrana defines like the different kinds of fae and brings together kind of different types of lore and she's created like a really robust universe in this. And kind of going back to, again, the pacing, part of that is because it is such a robust world, and I like that we get all of those details. I think it would have been nice if a lot of it wasn't just lore existing and telling us about it. It would have, I think, translated maybe or been a little less tell and more show would have been nice. A really big positive for me with this is that lore isn't just immediately good at everything. I've talked at length in the podcast about, not enjoying any characters that just are instantly good at something. And because of the nature of the politics in this world, lore has not interacted with other beings besides humans and the very cruel dark fae sentries who like monitor their land, which is really just a prison. And so when she gets this magic book, obviously this like whole new world of possibilities have opened up for her. And pretty immediately she knows how she can use this, and she knows what she needs to do or how to best manipulate this book to her advantage. And so I like that we get essentially these like training montages with her working with some of the other characters to decipher the book and to draw out, the information. So I should mention, again, spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, don't keep listening. Read the book, get back to it. The book itself, the magic book, the book within the book that is like driving the plot of this is blank. And she realizes it's magic in the library that only she can enter, allegedly. But once her and this book make a deal, again, fantasy, I don't want to get into the details of how that works right now. But once her and the book make a deal together, she's able to like get information from it. And she learns that if she takes flowers or like flora from around her and sets that on the book and essentially like presses it into the book will show her information on how to use that, like medicinally. So I like that instead of it just being, she already has this very long history, of knowing how to work all of these plants, she's learning through the book. The book is teaching her about the like herbal qualities, and it's teaching her the spells that she can use in order to save her friends, keep them safe, or, stop herself from being poisoned or treat poisoning. So I love that it's not just a matter of her already being super experienced in this. She's learning magic at the same time that she's learning like these herbal qualities from this place that she has no experience in. So I think Sbrana like manages very well to play into the fact that all of this is new to lore. I think she's handling it with grace, but there's the very clear evidence of the fact that she does not know this world. the extent of what she knows is everything that we've seen in the book so far. In the same vein, though, I talk about the pacing, but a big event issue that I had a problem getting, my mind around. At one point, she's breaking into the castle for a neighboring kingdom because she finds out that her childhood best friend is trapped there and he's being drugged by the queen. And one of the big themes throughout the book is definitely class issues, but I think it's most obnoxious in a good way, like most apparent in how obnoxious it is at this castle. There's just excess, and there's if we want to talk about gluttony, there's drunkenness and too much food, and it's all drugged, and her childhood friend Gray, is not coping well with it. And so there's one chapter where we find out that Gray is being held because she's been using, learning how to essentially scry on the people that she cares about. Obviously immediately freaks out. But then the next chapter, she's at the castle, and I've gotten busted ebooks and audiobooks from the library before. And so I had to check multiple times that I was on the right chapter, that nothing had been skipped out, because it felt like such out of left field for her to suddenly be in the castle when, 2-3 chapters before, she'd been immediately identified, even though she was in another kingdom, and chased and poisoned. So I was so confused because generally she's a smart character, but I was like, why the actual fuck are you going to this castle that you've been told explicitly once people are, they eat or drink, they're done. They're trapped. You don't get out. And kind of to make matters worse, so this part doesn't make matters worse. She gets Gray out. It's all successful. She breaks in, uses a bark that the book told her would help with poison to not be poisoned by the drugs and the food, gets Gray out and helps him detox for a few days. A few chapters later, not that long later, pretty much there's a chapter where Gray is detoxing, and then Asher and Isla come back, and they tell them about the humans being kidnapped by their kingdom. So once they get back, they tell them about the kidnappings. And immediately they're, making plans. Don't get me wrong. Of course they needed to make plans to save the 30-ish humans that were kidnapped. But where, several chapters before, we're just thrust into Lore kicking ass, and metaphorically speaking, she doesn't actually kick ass. She's just very well planned of breaking her friend out of this, essentially a prison. And I think it was just unbalanced in some ways to have her be able to accomplish that, time jump, accomplish that, and then jump to, actually, we need all of us to break into this castle, which in the end they did. Let me be clear, what was actually happening to them did require multiple people to break in, but they did not know that going into it. And I think it was just, expectations were kind of being set and then broken in terms of what characters are capable of, which may have been playing a role in my issues with the pacing. But yeah, it felt a little, I think unbalanced is the word that I'm looking for. It felt a little unbalanced in terms of what I was expecting from Laura's capabilities. But now that I've got all of that out of the way, I loved the characters in this book. And sure, I might have had issues with the pacing, but I love the characters enough that I am very excited for the sequel. Lore, I found to be extremely unselfish in a way that I would say, like, her actions in other characters would very well have been read as selfish, because she does a lot of things without thinking of the consequences. For instance, running into another kingdom's castle to break out her friend without support. I've got my qualms, obviously, but she didn't do it because she needed Gray. She did it because she knows that Gray would do it for her, and that's kind of exactly what got him into the situation. He had busted himself out of their prison town to try and go find Lore to help her, because he knew that she couldn't be anywhere safe. And I mean, he was right. And then we have Asher. This is the biggest spoiler for the book. This is, do not, like, pass go, do not collect 200, do not enter if you don't want the big one, the big spoiler. For a little context, Lore had been brought to the castle in her kingdom, the castle of the Fae who imprison her people, because there's a library in the castle that can't be entered by other Fae. We find out later that the guy who made the library, centuries ago, really made it so that nobody outside of his bloodline, Fae outside of its bloodline, couldn't enter. And so it was actually a gamble to see if a human could enter. Asher is presented as a sentry or, infantry, low-level guy who has been sent to monitor her. He takes her to and from lunch to the library, all meals, to her quarters. And over the weeks that she's cleaning up this library for Lord Cyrell to find some book, some magic book, anything with magic in it, she and Asher start to get close and, introduced to the first prong of the love triangle. So when he leaves for a little while is when she finally finds something with magic in it, and Cyrell had been really insistent that she share anything, and when she realizes that this book is far more powerful than she could have imagined, she runs off, immediately runs into Asher, and the two of them immediately run into other people, and they have to run away. At this point, he's in deep with her, and so it's like, okay, he's in for the long haul, and I'm thinking, we haven't even met the other guy from this love triangle. How are they going to navigate this? Because Asher's basically given up his entire life now for her. So either there's something else going on, or he's going to die. He did not die, just so we're clear. There are a few times after they've run off and eventually find some allies and, like, old friends of his, where he says something or he does something where it's like, am I just not liking that because this guy isn't my cup of tea, or is there something actually, like, not right about this? One of those times is they're, like, getting, they're getting kind of steamy, they're getting a little spicy, and he, in the same scene, calls her, like, mine, which, all right, I give people passes in books because, it's books. That's what we're here for. But there's always a part of me that cringes a little bit at it. And in that scene, even though they're getting a little hot and heavy, they don't have sex. And his explanation is that he wants it to be after they break into the castle and break these people free. So that way he doesn't have to, something like, he doesn't want their friends to be within earshot, and he doesn't want to have to, like, he just wants to have her, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it didn't have the vibe of, after this battle, we'll be together and they're gonna die kind of thing. It had the vibe of like, something's gonna go wrong. And so they get in there and they're going through old passages, and Asher says something about, like, my brother and I used to explore these old passages, and we knew that early on that they used to explore parts of the castle because there's this secret, like, hidden garden that he shows to Lore at one point. But when they're breaking into the castle, it's not so much that he had found this garden, it was that he'd been exploring old parts of the castle, like abandoned royal apartments, and stumbled through old places and through there had found the gardens. And I'm like, there's very few ways that people in the castle are going to be able to just wander into abandoned apartments. And then once we're really, they've broken in and we're getting the kind of layout of things, it's not like these apartments are disconnected from everything. They're very much connected to the main royal apartments. You have to pass them to get to this abandoned area. The only reason they're abandoned is because the king and the queen haven't had kids. And so this isn't like a wing that was abandoned. It's like very active wing with just a few unused rooms. And it did not sit well with me that we find out that he's just been playing in those since he was a kid. You know me, I like to not give away all of the spoilers, so I won't tell you exactly what dark deeds are happening in this castle. It's fucked up. It was fun to read, for sure, and I think a lot of the book feels, in some ways, younger than I would expect it to, but Sbrana, like, balances these very heavy themes and very heavy, like, political situations. I will get into that in a second. Okay. So once we get to the point where we find out what's actually happening, what big secret has been, we've been finding out that dark fae children are going missing, and there's inklings that shit's happening to the humans, and we don't know exactly what's happening just yet. Once that's revealed, and they break Lore's friends and family out of the castle, they're following. It's Lore, Asher, and Finn. Finn is the tall, dark, and handsome one that I knew immediately I was gonna love. I don't want to get into him just yet. Because Asher's betrayal is so much bigger. This isn't like, I was thinking Asher is secretly actually working for Lord Cyrell and he can't be trusted and he was in on it the whole time. Well, he was in on it, but it's because he is Lord Cyrell. He shapeshifted and for years had just been like playing at being poor when he got bored, which was so disgusting. I love that Sbrana did that too, because it's not just that like he had this whole other identity because, at some point he was a good person. It's like, no, he's been bad the whole time. And he just occasionally put on this Asher face when he got bored so that he could go around and do whatever he wanted and not have to deal with the consequences. So he reveals who he really is and is just like, yeah, so you're not going anywhere. They can all get away. I don't care about them because there's some other lord's plot. You're going to help me find the other books. And so we find out that he is the descendant of the guy who created the library, and he can go in there, actually, but he doesn't want other people to know, I think, is the expectation. And for whatever reason, the book never bonded to him, but it immediately bonded to Lore. So he's going to use her to find the other book. This book is very much like Moon, Lunar, Moonlight, and the next one is, I think, Book of Sunbeams. And so we're going to have to, find this solar book. And I knew a betrayal was coming. That is the nature of the love triangle, is somebody has to die or be betrayed. There is no in between. That's how we, like, writers, authors, and readers have to choose. The fact that he was literally the guy moving all of the chess pieces made me so pissed in a, in a good, like, reader good kind of way. I was livid. I was absolutely livid. One, because when he's talking about, how he wants to wait until after they get everybody out of the castle, he really just thinks that lore belongs to him. And oh, that pissed me off. That pissed me off so much. And it pissed me off because, again, it's fun to be like the, you're mine kind of shit in books, but in real life, obviously, it pisses me off. I can't speak for everybody. I'm not a big fan of that in real life. He made it feel like it was the real life version where there's just somebody who feels entitled, an entitled asshole saying that kind of stuff. And that's not hot. That's not sexy. And then he stole her and Finn to go on this adventure. I say adventure. That's got such a positive connotation. This is not an adventure. This is the darkest of quests, to go help him try to fulfill whatever fantasy or legacy he thinks he's entitled, again, to fulfill. Oh, I was so pissed. I love a book that makes me that kind of angry, and this is why it's a 4-star read for me, because I want to jump in the book and punch him in the face, or pull him out and punch him in the face, because that was gross in the best of ways, the best of reader ways, which made it very easy for me to be like, well, yeah, obviously Finn's the answer. I was saying that from the moment we met Finn, but he has these, like, gentle moments. Finn is very much like the, I mean to everybody but you. They have these moments where he's like, if you can't see why I'm here, then we don't need to talk about it. Don't bring it up. And he still helps her, and he still follows her to make sure she's safe. He trusts her, but he also still wants to protect her. And I think he balances that, at least in this book so far, he's balancing that very well. So I was definitely a fan of Finn. And I hope we get to, there's like a family history there where they call him, like, unclanned, I think is what it was. And his grandfather, whose sword he like keeps on him, and it's definitely a point of pride for him. But his grandfather, from what I understand, did something to essentially, like, tarnish their name. So I'm kind of hoping that because Finn has also been kidnapped by Cyrell, that we'll get to see a little bit more of that and get a little bit deeper on what that whole situation is. Because it does feel important. Like, it's a fantasy book, and we have this secret family history and sword tied to it. Like, there's definitely Aragorn vibes where it's like there's something that he has to redeem, and it's related to the sword, and it's from an ancestor. Like, it definitely is giving me, like, repairing the sins of the father kind of situation. So I'm excited to see that play out. But yeah, this is a 4-star read for me. I think if you can get past some of the expository slowness to begin with, then it's the payoff is absolutely excellent. But yeah, that was probably my favorite read of the year so far. And what is up next on the docket? At the time of recording this, I am currently finishing the Never list and soon going to be starting a reread of The Hunger Games, which I'm very excited for. I'm making myself reread The Hunger Games before I get to Sunrise on the Reaping, mostly because I've got another, I think, 15 or 16 weeks on the Libby wait list before that's anywhere near me. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I'm touching up on my Hunger Games lore before I do that. But yeah, I highly recommend this book, especially if you're looking to get into easier fantasy reads. I think it had some heavy themes, but I think it was given in a very digestible way, which I appreciated. So highly recommend, 4 stars. And also, get it from your local library. Support local libraries because They are a cornerstone of our culture, which America needs to get on, but I won't get into that. So thank you for joining me for another episode of In Bed with Books, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Happy reading. Thank you for joining me for another episode of In Bed with Books, a bookish podcast for bookish babes. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of the latest updates. And if you have any suggestions for authors, books, or topics that you want to hear about on the podcast, then feel free to DM me on Instagram or shoot me an email. I'm wishing you a lovely rest of your day, and until next time, happy reading.